Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight, featuring a special book launch for Lois Flewelling and her newest book, Freedom After Betrayal. My name is Megan Beals, and I have the privilege of being here in person with Lois tonight to host this special event. And tonight we have some special things in store for everyone who's joining us. Lois is going to share the meaning behind the pages and the inspiration that went into writing Freedom After Betrayal. And we will take a few minutes and actually spend some time talking through the most common questions that have come up, because Lois, I know you've had a lot of conversations with people about this book already.
I have.
Yes.
I have.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting because I've been doing a podcast. And so on this betrayal, a few of the episodes are out now. But people are just commenting and asking questions, and it's just exciting to see all the interaction with it.
That's
And also
awesome.
on my YouTube channel as well, because they go up on my YouTube channel, and I'm receiving comments through different avenues on the questions. Yeah, it's good.
And what is your YouTube channel, in case anyone wanted
It's just
to
under
tune
my
in?
name, Lois Flewelling.
Okay, so if you're interested in checking that out, you can always go to search Lois Flewelling.
On the YouTube, and my podcast is A New Level Awaits You. And both of them you can find right on my website, loisflewelling.com.
Thank you. These are good resources. And so, speaking of good resources, this book, Freedom After Betrayal, it's an incredible book. I've already read it. I think I shared this with you, Lois. I read through it once. I didn't even stop to highlight anything, and usually I do. So I need to go back, read it again, and take time to highlight, because it is a good resource. You ask a lot of really wonderful questions, and I know that comes from all of your background and your experience in ministry, and I could see that come through. And I know you'll talk about this in a few minutes, but for everyone who's joining us, I think this book is just a wonderful tool and resource to have, no matter where you're at on your journey to finding freedom after betrayal. And that's what I think is one of the most beautiful things about it, is it can speak to anyone. So those of you who know Lois personally, or maybe are familiar with her work, you know that this is not her first book. And this is book number 8.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Number 8. So this, as I like to say, is not her first rodeo. So she's written 8 books. And this book, Freedom After Betrayal, is actually book number 2 in the Thrive and Wholeness series. So be sure to take a look into those other books as well. And I would say, of all of the books Lois has written, the theme throughout all of them is about healing and restoration and forward movement with God.
Yes.
And I think that's just beautiful. I know I keep saying that word, but that's just what comes to mind for the work that you're doing, and for having this available to people just on our journeys through this life. So thank you.
That's part of my assignment, actually. My assignment from the Lord is to help people move out of where they have been, whether it's pain or trauma or even betrayal. And like I said, stepping into your destiny, which is what God wants for every single one of us.
And she talks more about that in the book as well. And we'll share a little bit with us in just a moment about destiny and purpose, and how that all works in with overcoming and experiencing freedom from that betrayal. So Lois, as you know, she's an author who's written 8 books now. She's also an international speaker, a teacher, and counselor, and has decades of experience in ministry and also in the prophetic.
Right.
And I've known Lois now for many years. I'm blessed to know her family, and I have to say, Lois is one of the kindest, strongest, most prophetic people I've ever met. And I have had the experience, working with her through some ministry and um, gained a lot through her wisdom from, in ministry and your life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very excited tonight because now everybody who's joining us has a chance to benefit from that wisdom. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you for having me here.
Yes.
And just before we get started, I just want to say again how grateful we are that you're joining us tonight from wherever you might be. You have chosen to be here with us tonight, and we are so grateful. So, Lois, we'd love to hear from you. Hear what you have to say. What's behind these pages?
Well, I'm just so pleased to be able to come before you. I'm really grateful that you've taken out some time to be a part of this launch with me. I'm really excited about this book. This book, Freedom After Betrayal, has um, a spiritual, what can I say, anointing upon it that I know is godly designed to really help people. Now, this book wasn't written just as a project. It wasn't just an idea either. This was something that came out of real life experiences, not just my experiences, but from many other people that I've talked to over the many years that I've been in counseling and in ministry. And I want you to know that I've talked to so many that carry pain, and I sense even tonight that you're listening because you have some pain. Most of us do. Betrayal doesn't hit just a few people. It typically hits just about everybody that I know. And so it comes through, the relationships that we have, and these relationships have been with people that we've really trusted. And so it happens sometimes in families. It sometimes happens in, different friendships. And sometimes it even happens in places where we have felt loved and secure, but then the trust was broken. And so I refer to all of these areas in the book because I think there's some places that we need to talk about. And many of you have had these type of hurts, whether it's in very close relationships or even in church environments. And so we know that betrayal, has a unique way of just piercing the heart, don't we? And the reason for that is because it comes from somebody that we really, truly trusted, and then that trust got broken. And oftentimes, when trust is broken, it can leave us with so many questions around, things like, can I trust again? Will this pain ever really leave me? And the question that sometimes I've heard a lot of is, will I ever feel whole again? And so, as I've told you, I've been in ministry for many years. I've been a counselor for, she said, decades. Yes, it has been decades.
I meant that as a good thing.
I know you did. And I realize my age, but through my age, I've gotten, there's a lot of experience, and God uses every experience I've gone through. And so I've sat with many, many people. In fact, I interviewed over 70 people just in researching for this book from all over the world. And I've watched how betrayal can leave people just feeling wounded, discouraged, and very stuck, unsure about how do I move forward in my life. And so I've witnessed something really powerful as well. I've witnessed this in my own life, and I've witnessed this in the lives of many others. And I've seen how God can just step into those very places of woundedness, those places of pain, places where we've had just very deep trauma. And, he just begins to heal. He just shines his light on us. And I've seen where wounded hearts have been restored. And I've seen where people rediscover hope. And I love that,
So
Megan,
powerful.
because it's when there's been a lot of hopeless people out there around us. And so I've seen that, but I've also seen them and I have experienced this myself where I can rebuild trust again. I've lost quite a few people that I thought were my friends. But my goodness, God has restored it tenfold. And now I have so many people that I'm connected with, and I know they're loyal to me, and I'm loyal to them.
Well, and that word hope is
Yes.
so amazing, and there's so much power, I think,
Yes.
just from that word.
Yes.
And and I don't know, I think that's something people can use more of, right?
Yes.
Always.
Always. And this is what I wanted. That's why I titled it Freedom After Betrayal. Because, and if you notice my tagline, it talks about restored trust. It talks about having a purpose again, renewed purpose, but it also talks about walking out into wholeness. And it's a biblical way to do it. And that's what I love about the Lord.
Well, I see that right here. I was just thinking, what exactly is the tagline? The tagline is a biblical path to wholeness, restored trust, and renewed purpose.
Yes.
Which is interesting to me.
Yes.
That renewed purpose. And
because we have to stand back up again.
Mm-hmm.
We really do. And this is part of what God has done for me. Mm-hmm. And so I want to help other people also stand back up again in faith and be able to trust God again for all that he has for you. But I've seen what God, what was meant to destroy us, God turns that all around. He turns it all around and he transforms it into something that really strengthens us. I am much stronger than I ever was before, but I've gone through every type of betrayal that I talk about in the book. And many people have, but God can strengthen us in that path. And that's why I wrote Freedom After Betrayal. I wrote it because it's an invitation into a healing journey. It's an invitation to discover, that with God, all things are possible. Freedom is possible. Wholeness is possible. And this is not just words. I've seen so many step into so much greater things in their life because they've gone through this process. So it is my hope that anyone who reads this book would realize you're not alone in this process. There's many of us out there. That even in the midst of disappointment, even if you're questioning what I'm saying, even right now, you're just disappointed. You may be even disappointed in God some, because we blame God sometimes for some of the stuff that we go through, and yet it is not God. It's the failure of mankind. And so I want to just share with you that God is a beautiful picture for you. He's got a beautiful future for you. And I want to say, just because we've gone through and had the experience of betrayal, it doesn't define who you are, nor is it the end of the story.
Wow. There's more to the story. There is more to your story. That is so powerful. This isn't the end. It's not over. It's not over.
And, we talk about that, but I think what the Lord pressed on me so strongly was that Betrayal does not get the final word. We do. It's our choice. And betrayal doesn't get the final word. So I'm really grateful that I get to share parts of this with you today.
Well, that's wonderful. Is there anything specific from the book that you'd like to share?
Well, I will tell you that there is a piece in my book. I'm not going to read it, but I'll share it because it was such a vivid vision that I had. It is the premise of the book, actually.
Okay.
And I was sitting on a plane. I have many visions. God speaks to me through visions. And I will tell you that he wanted me to write this book now for 40 years. And I had said no. And yet I knew I would be writing it because I eventually get into this place where I have to be obedient with the Lord. So this one day I was sitting there and I said, Lord, I know you want me to write this book. You're constantly saying to me, write. And so I went into a vision. And in the vision, I was sitting on a plane. And I noticed that when I walked in, I sat on the plane, I saw an individual that was there, and there was something unique about that individual. And I have been in I've been on lots of flights. I've sat beside the security guys on there. They're always observing, always watching, and this is what this individual was doing. But at first, it seemed like everything was fairly normal. And, there was just a quiet conversations, people getting on the plane, putting their baggage up over. And then all of a sudden, I noticed there was a shift in what this individual was doing. And that individual was observing every single person that walked on that plane and sat down. And then the Lord began to open up my understanding around it. And what I was seeing was not just simply awareness. I began to see that this was very spiritual. I realized that I was watching an angel on assignment. And that angel began to go through, there was many angels actually going through the airplane. And they were moving through the cabin in various ways. Some were whispering peace into the passengers who were anxious about flying. Others had placed their hands gently upon hearts that were filled with the stress and fear. Maybe of their circumstances, maybe it was around flying, but I could tell that they were calming down the hearts. And then something even more striking appeared to me. I began to see wounds on the passengers. I saw bruises. I saw deep scars. I saw scabs and pain pockets. And then I saw something that really was striking was arrows. Arrows that were pierced in the backs of individuals, arrows that were broken off, and some of them were even in their shoulders and so forth. And at that moment, God started to speak to me about what these arrows represented. It represented betrayal. It represented brokenness. It represented rejection, accusations, and so painful words that have been spoken over their lives. And so as I continued to watch, God showed me something else. Beneath these wounds, hidden deep within every single person, were extraordinary callings. I love this part because I could see it written all of them. Their callings, their purposes, their talents, their assignments that they had. And what I was seeing was the pain from all of this betrayal, all of this brokenness was covering up what God had intended for them. And at that moment, I realized there was no one exempt. Every single person was being affected in some way or another. Every one of us carry wounds, but also every one of us carries a purpose, a beautiful purpose that God has just specifically for us. And so that's part of the reason why I wrote Freedom After Betrayal, because God sees the wounds, but also he sees the destiny within us. And his desire is to heal those particular wounds, that brokenness that we I think we get stuck in. We get into places where we don't know how to move out of. So this whole vision became the very catalyst, and you'll notice by my chapter titles, a lot of them I dove into were all these things like scabs and wounds and bruises and pain pockets, and it talks about suitcases and new destinies, and it's just very powerful, because my heart's desire, along with God's, is that each one of us move into the very place, the destiny that he has designed for us. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Wow, thank
Good
you
stuff.
for sharing all of that. It helps give, just some interesting, I think, background into how this came to be.
Yes. Yes.
Which is always, I think, helpful to know when you're picking up a new book and reading. At least I like to know those things.
Yes.
I know I get curious about people's stories and what's on their hearts. And so thank you for sharing what's been on yours. And maybe as you listened, to Lois share about the meaning behind the pages and this inspiration behind this book, there are some questions that have come to mind for you. And, when we first started chatting here, you talked about being on a podcast and doing these podcasts and having conversations around this book and around this topic of betrayal. And there have been, it sounds like, a lot of questions that have come up.
Yes.
And we had that in-person live book launch a couple of weeks ago, which was really wonderful. A lot of questions. And so what we noticed is there has been a theme in these questions. And we just want to take a few minutes right now to address those questions, because many of you may have some of the same ones here who are joining us this evening. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask the question to you, Lois, and just so everyone can have an opportunity to hear, in case that's something that they can relate with, if that sounds good.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to grab these questions and all right. Okay, so the first question that has been pretty common has to do with what happens after the betrayal. There's so much, I think that can happen after, and but I think, freedom is a word that has come up for people. So when you talk about freedom that comes after betrayal, what does that word freedom really mean for someone who's been through this darkness, this deep hurt?
Well, freedom varies from individual to individual. Some, their voices have been stolen away from them, and so they get that freedom to have their voice back, who they are. There's freedom for individuals who have lost confidence, feel very insecure. They've isolated themselves, so they get freedom to go back out into society and not worry about who's out there, who they're going to, be triggered by, and so forth. And so freedom varies from individual to individual. For me, it was that piece of getting myself back out. I've isolated myself, but also it's understanding who I am, and that I don't have to hide who I am. I can have the freedom to be who I am because of the uniqueness that God has for me. has for you as well. That you're listening. Yeah.
All right. The next question. Many people struggle with the first step toward what healing can look like. What would you say to someone who feels stuck in that place and doesn't know where to start?
Well, I think that you have to, the first step is really recognizing it, facing the pain. When we hide it, bury it, push it so far down, we can deny a lot of things, and we'll say we're okay, but we're really not okay. So we have to allow ourselves to really face whatever that is, whatever happened to us, face the rejection, and say, you know what, that really did hurt. That shouldn't have happened. Or different aspects around it. And when we start doing that, then we ask God to come in and just enter in, and He will start doing business with us. And it's very powerful because we can't cover up anymore, because we get stuck in this, and it redefines who we really are. And I know, for some of the people that I've talked to, one individual is just coming to my mind, and she couldn't even walk outside her home. And she's just a young person. And she had been betrayed, she had been rejected so severely that she was just constantly aware of her surroundings. And she just took some steps by going outside of her home, started to walk, and before we knew it, oh my goodness, she was walking blocks and downtown, and all of a sudden that freedom started to come upon her, because she decided, I've got to face this. Wow. I have to face this. So the different levels of first steps, but it is important that we face it.
And that's nice that you just said that too, with the different levels, right? Because everybody is starting in a different place, right? We've experienced different things in our lives. Everybody has, and so therefore, if we've been betrayed, then different types of betrayal.
Right.
So there isn't necessarily, a specific formula that, for anyone who's thinking, oh gosh, maybe I missed this step, or I've got to get it exactly right. It doesn't seem like there's an exact science to it, right? Because it's different for everybody. So I would like to share that too as an encouragement, as I've just heard you say this, that it's really about, I think, just being open to that healing and to that freedom.
It absolutely is. Yeah. And in each chapter, you mentioned it, I have in the book, I have questions at the end to help people walk through pieces of it, and those are steps as well. And it's interesting because I've gone through the journey of it. People will say, wow, those questions were really hard. And I'm thinking, no, I thought they were quite easy, but I then had to recall, I've gone through this process. So to me, they were easy to answer because I faced it and I'm walking through it. For them, it was the beginning steps to it.
And also I want to add too, I mentioned this in the introduction, but you're also a trained counselor, right? And so, having that perspective and that knowledge that you're bringing to this book with those questions that are asked, in the book, I think is really beneficial.
Yes.
So, all right. Next question. If betrayal is often from those we're closest to, how can we learn to trust again?
This, I have to say, is like I said, I've experienced it. I would say carefully and cautiously. No way do we go back into a very toxic, abusive place. So you don't want that. You take it carefully, you go cautiously, you build your trust around people that you can really feel. I had to do that. So when you go and you meet people and your first reaction is, I don't know, I'm wavering here. I don't know if I can trust these people. Well, as you go along, you discover bit by bit who you can trust, and you just kind of have to be aware of it. Discernment comes in. Listen to your gut feelings. Allow that to happen. I will tell you something that I learned when I was going through this, and a friend told me this, was that we have different levels of relationships. So we have acquaintances, we have friends, we have close friends, we have intimate, what I call inner circle friends, and then we have what we call covenant friends. And sometimes we think that we always have to keep them in that place, but if they've broken our trust, this person said, you can shift them up and down at any point. So I had some very, close friends. Listen, I shifted them down to acquaintances, and that's all I do is I will just say hello, and that's all they are. They're like an acquaintance to me now. Whereas, others, maybe we've had just a friend or an acquaintance, and all of a sudden we're shifting them up. It's our choice. We get to choose where we want to place them. Even in covenant relationships, somebody asked me, well, what does that mean? These are covenant where we've really given our heart out to somebody at a deep, deep level. And so sometimes it can be like our spouses, but sometimes it's also these very, very good friends that we just tell everything to, and then all of a sudden we got betrayed. And so we can shift them down, and we have to, and I think it's wise. We need to be wise about that, but trust can be built. Like I said, I have so many friends now that are all over. Even if I don't talk to them on a regular basis, when we do talk, it's like we're there.
So it sounds like putting boundaries in place.
Yes.
Essentially, we would be the ones to choose. So I'm wondering if, from what you just said, a question people might have is, we experience betrayal from someone in a covenant relationship. Say it was a spouse or a close friend, because I think I read somewhere, that oftentimes that can be where it happens, right? It's the people who we're closest to. Is it possible to rebuild trust after deep betrayal with covenant relationships, would you say?
A different person or the same person?
The same.
The same person. It is possible, but it does require honesty, true communication with that individual, and on both sides. And you start out here, below at the small, and you build it, and so that you can rebuild. I've seen marriages that trust has been broken, but I've seen them restored. But I always say it takes two people. It can't be just because one wants it. It has to be two people having open, honest conversations and willing to forgive, willing to repent, willing to really put in the actions for what it needs to build that back up again. So yes, it is possible.
Well, thank you for answering the common questions. I actually have one question, just jumping back to the subtitle that we talked about. So I'm going to read that again, and then I'll ask. All right, so the subtitle is A Biblical Path to Wholeness, Restored Trust, and Renewed Purpose. So in the last few minutes, you've talked a lot about purpose. You've talked a lot about identity. Tell me a little bit about the renewed part of the purpose here. How does the renewed purpose play into all of this after we've been betrayed? What does that look like? What do you mean by that?
Well, when we're betrayed by, say for example, in a church environment, and you were you have the purpose of, or assignment, say, of fulfilling certain positions, and broken trust is there. And I've seen where, people will pull away from the church, and I understand it. I had to pull away from a church. I understand that, but we lose our purpose because all of a sudden we're not in that environment, or we're not in that particular position, and then God comes and gives you a whole new assignment, a whole new area of ministry, a different place where all of a sudden you're feeling really connected. So that's the renewed purpose that you have. It may be very similar to what you had before. Or let's say, for example, if you were in a covenant relationship and you worked as a team, because there's lots of husband-wife teams, and all of a sudden that's betrayal. Is maybe the husband just doesn't want to do this in the ministry anymore, or doesn't want to be in the business anymore, and things start to get you feeling betrayed and all of that. You can still get defined what your purpose is. It's shifted. You may be doing similar things, but it's a renewed purpose in the Lord on what He has for you. And it's always good. It's always good.
Well, it reminds me of something else that you said, which is this isn't the end. Betrayal isn't the end. There's still so much more to your story.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, thank you for answering those questions and sharing all of that. I did want to share, before Lois shares some, final words with us tonight, there is a leader's guide, actually, that goes with this book. So if you're interested in doing a small group or a little book club, there is a guide. I actually have it right here. And this goes into some more detail. So it can help, leaders facilitate honest, biblically grounded discussion without pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Help establish healthy boundaries for groups and develop safety, within that group. Recognize some common emotional responses in betrayal recovery. These are all Lois's words. I'm reading right from the back of this. This is exactly what you would get. It would help you lead with clarity, humility, and confidence. And as you can see, it goes with every chapter. There's a leader focus for the session, and then kind of going into some of those questions. There's an optional prayer at the end. So it's very thorough. If that's something, that you're interested in doing, stepping out and being part of a group to walk through this together, there is a leader's guide. And there's a new participants guide.
Yes.
And I say new, the book is new, but this is newer because you had a lot of requests for that, right?
I had requests for it because both the leader guide and the participant guide has many more questions, and you can pick. There's so many questions for each chapter that you can pick and choose it's expanded from just the book. I originally just did the leader's guide, and then because of the request, I now have the participant guide as well to go with it. Nice.
So a couple of wonderful tools that can be added if that's something that you're interested in. And then Lois, if people are interested in purchasing the book, how do they do that?
Well, there's two ways. Actually, the only thing, everything's on Amazon, except for the participant guide, and that will be coming up shortly. We'll be putting that up on Amazon. Everything else is on my website as well, loisflewelling.com. And so, and you can purchase it. Only if you're out of the country, you probably should go through Amazon because it's difficult sometimes to send things, overseas for a reasonable price. Let's put it that way.
Okay, thank you. And then, do you have a few words that you'd like to leave with us? As I know we're running out of time. Our time is coming to an end. So, is there anything you'd like to share with us?
Well, I will just want to again just thank you so much for just being here, just allowing me to to share this message with you. I think it's an important message. I know that betrayal and brokenness are not easy topics. It wasn't easy for me to share in some of this, or share the people that I interviewed for them to share with me. But, you know, the very things that we avoid are the very things that God wants to use powerfully. So it takes courage to be honest. It takes, and to face the places in our lives that need the healing. So I know in those very places, that's where honesty is. That's where healing is going to begin. So that's my prayer for you, is that God would just really stir your heart, that He would stir your heart for freedom, for wholeness. He has work for you to do as well. He desires a life for you to live that is just, He calls it abundant life in the Word, and it's just very, very powerful. So my prayer is that this book, and like I said, I also have the first book in the series, which is Tenacious Warriors. I have a participant guide and a leader's guide for that as well. That will, once you get your healing, then we'll go war. Let's take back what's been stolen from us, whether it's through betrayal or through whatever process. Let's get it back. So I'll just say this again, keep this in mind. Betrayal may be part of your story, but it doesn't get the final word.
Oh, thank you so much, Lois. That's so powerful. And thank you again, everyone, who's joining us tonight. Again, wherever you may be joining us from, we are so thankful that you were here with us this evening to celebrate with us, this virtual book launch. We wanted to extend an opportunity beyond the in-person one to give everyone a chance to hear from Lois about the meaning behind these pages and this inspiration. And I hope that you're encouraged tonight, by the words that were shared and the resources that are available. And again, if you're interested in purchasing the book, you can go to Lois's website, which is
LoisFlewelling.com.
Or Amazon if you're located outside of the United States. Lois said that might be easier for purchasing. So thank you so much again. We hope you have a wonderful evening and are blessed. Thank you.
So I just feel like I have a word for a few of you out there, maybe all of you out there. Megan mentioned that I can be very prophetic. And as I've been sitting here and as I've been talking, the Lord's been talking to me. And I did mention that He has need of you. And I want to encourage you to push in for your healing, because God has specific assignments already. It's already hovering over you. I can see it's hovering over you. I can tell that God, God has His arrows too. And He wants to pierce you with His arrows, with the fire and the word of the Lord on things, so that you can go forth in a mighty way and reach your region, your territory for the kingdom of God. I know that is for many, many of you. And so I just want to say, go forth, go forth, go forth in your healing and in the work that God has specifically designed for you. So bless you, and thank you again for being here tonight.